Hello, magical people. My name is Lumenyxx, and thank you so much for being here. In this video, I am going to talk about the upcoming full moon, which is occurring on March 25th, 2024 in the sign of Libra. So we are going to go over the astrology, we're going to go over the numerology, and then there will be a pick a card tarot reading. There will be 3 readings to choose from. You can choose 1, 2, or all 3. And there will be, I'll get back around to this, but there will be tokens and such. So to start off with, we are going to actually dive into what is a full moon. And a full moon is when the sun and the moon are opposed to one another in the sky. So they're 180 degrees apart. And that means that in terms of signs, they are also halfway around the zodiac circle from one another. So in this case, we have the sun in Aries and the moon in Libra. Now, in North America, this full moon is often called the worm moon. And while some may find that to be a slightly less romantic naming than many of the other moons get throughout the year, I'm rather fond of this one. This is the first full moon of spring. And honestly, I didn't really do any actual research into this because it just seems so obvious to me as a gardener as to where the name of the worm moon came from. And so this is the time of year when the soil, the land is, if you are in a place where it gets really cold during the winter, then this is the time of year when the earth has begun to soften enough so that it can be worked for the purposes of agriculture. And of course, once you start turning up that newly warmed earth, you see that there are a lot of there's a lot of earthworm action happening under there, which is great. That's exactly what we want in our gardens because earthworms are just one of nature's magical little creatures that it makes so much of what we love about being able to grow things and enjoy the things that are grown. It's one of the creatures that makes that possible. So I, for one, always appreciate worms when I see them in the garden. If I happen to come across one in the garden that's in a place that's not beneficial to it or something like that, I have definitely been known to pick them up and move them. So this, again, is the first full moon of spring. So again, the worm moon makes perfect sense. Now, in terms of the astrology, we have actually a variety of aspects that we're going to go through here. And I do have a notebook because it's just too much to remember. So we are going to go through, we've got a few different kinds of aspects. We've got oppositions, we've got conjunctions, we've got sextiles, and we have even one trine. So there's some big things happening for this full moon. And another thing that we've got going, actually 2 other things. One, it is a penumbral lunar eclipse on Monday, so for this full moon. And essentially what that means is that there will be a portion of the day when the moon will be moving through the penumbral shadow created by the sun, the earth, and the moon. And so it's not as apparent as a total eclipse, a total lunar eclipse, or even a partial lunar eclipse can sometimes be easier to see. This one's a bit more subtle, but it is still pretty cool to know. And also, astrologically speaking, for this full moon, we have a stellium in Pisces. And a stellium is when there are 3 or more planets that are in the same sign. And so sort of like similar to conjunctions, which is also when planets are close to one another in the sky, it has a similar effect, which is that it tends to magnify and increase and exacerbate the energy of that sign that they're all in. In this case, like I said, it is Pisces. So you'll hear me mentioning Pisces several times, although that is not where our sun sign currently is. So I don't know, if you really enjoyed this most recent Pisces series, if you really enjoyed the most recent Pisces season and you've been sad to see it go, then this is an opportunity to re-dip into some of that energy. And of course, the energy of Pisces is mutable water. So this is rather formless and a bit dreamy. It's very creative. It's very intuitive. This is less a thing that you can hold or point at or poke at and measure, and more a thing of the ephemeral. There are no boundaries to it because it is a water aspect. So it takes the shape of the receptacle that it's in a way. So Pisces is very fluid. It is very creative. It's very sensitive energy, sort of in the same way you imagine water, the element, being sensitive to the space which contains it. And by sensitive, it is conforming to the parameters of the vessel that it contains it. I don't know if that's a metaphor that fully works. I feel like I started to go somewhere and then kind of lost it halfway through. So if I just lost all or some of you, real sorry about that. But it is, regardless, a stellium in Pisces. Now, typically stelliums are when there are planets that are multiple, 3 or more planets that are in one sign. But I just did also want to note, for posterity, I guess, that if we include various either asteroids or aspects of the moon, like the North Node and the South Node, then we actually have a second stellium in the sign of Aries. So in Pisces, we have, sorry, I think I forgot to say this. In Pisces, we have Mars, Venus, Saturn, and Neptune are all in the sign of Pisces right now. And in the sign of Aries, we have, of course, the Sun, the North Node, Chiron, and Mercury. So big energy here is, I guess, what I'm getting at. And Aries is, of course, that is cardinal fire. This is very much right out of the gate type of energy. It's very forward moving. It's very kind of impulsive. What was I going to say? Impulsive. That's the word I was looking for. It's rather impulsive energy. It's hot. It's like hot-tempered, hot-temperatured, very forward-moving energy. So that is, of course, very different from the energy of Pisces. So, all right. So now diving into the specific aspects, we are going to start with the oppositions, and we have 2. Of course, we have the Sun and the Moon being opposed to one another. That is literally what makes it a full moon. So we have the Sun again in Aries, and then we have the Moon in Libra. And what oppositions do is they kind of illuminate tensions or highlight areas where it would be to our benefit to have some compromise or have some harmony. Now, a note about astrology in general. I've found this pretty helpful to keep in mind. So if we think about the planets as our needs or our abilities, the what, so to speak, then we have the signs, which modify how we get those needs met or how those abilities show up. And so we can also think of the signs as the how. We also have a third thing, which is the houses. And the houses are the experience that we have in various aspects of life. So the sort of where things show up. And because what houses are impacted, that's never something that I cover. So you're going to always want to look back if you want to really go next level on this stuff. You're going to want to take a look at your specific natal chart. And so, for example, when I say the Sun and the Moon are showing up in this way, then you've got the Sun, which is representative of the ego or the conscious self. You've got the Moon, which is kind of our feels, and our sort of less conscious aspect of the self. So if you look at where the Sun and the Moon show up, then you'll see how this full moon being opposed, illuminating tensions between the energy of the self being wanted to drive forward and be really impulsive and moving quickly, versus that energy of the moon being in the sign of Libra. And Libra is cardinal air. So we have a very different kind of energy here, you know? So Libra is a bit cooler overall as an energy, as opposed to fire. Again, we've got air, so there's all of the things implicit with talking about, you know, hot and cold or hot and cooler. There is also, of course, Libra is indicated by these scales. So there is an aspect of holding back, being in cooperation on things, being in balance on things. So you can see how you may want to hold back in some way, but also wanting to be moving forward. And for your own best life, it is beneficial to know where those challenges are and how they're highlighted. And looking at your personal natal chart at what houses the sun and the moon show up in will give you a little bit more direction as to what aspect of your life those opposing energies are going to show up in. So in addition to the moon being opposed to the sun, we also have the moon, still in Libra, being opposed to Neptune in Pisces. So again, we have this aspect of your feelings and your less conscious self as sort of flavored by the sign of Libra and balance and cooperation, being put up against the energy of Neptune and Pisces. And Neptune and Pisces is, well, first of all, Neptune is the ruler of Pisces. So we got big Pisces energy here. So this is taking the energy of dreams and sometimes illusions as well. This is kind of the space that, or the energy of psychic sensitivity or emotional sensitivity or just sensitivity in general. So, you know, you might see some things coming up between the way you feel about things and maybe some intuitive hits that you're getting. So as with all oppositions, as with all full moons, there are things illuminated that give us further direction about how to be better in alignment within our own life so that we can be most impactful, have the most satisfaction, have the most access to our own experiences so that we can take those learnings into the future. So that's it for the oppositions. We just have the two. We have for conjuncts, we've got three. So first, we've got the sun in Aries being conjunct to Neptune in Pisces. So again, you'll see a lot of repeating stuff coming up here. So conjunctions are when the things are close to one another in the sky. And typically conjunctions are also in the same sign. But in this case, we've got the sun in Aries at the very beginning of the Aries cycle, and then we have Neptune in Pisces at the very end of the Pisces cycle. So even though they are conjunctions, they are actually, in this case, not in the same sign. But conjunctions, what they do is they kind of blend and merge and intensify the combined energies of those two things. So we have the conscious self and that desire to move forward, kind of again coming up with our psychic and intuitive hits being flavored by the sign of Aries. So one way this could show up for you is maybe you'll notice that maybe daydreaming a little bit will be helpful for you in getting some more information, some more data about future steps that you want to take. We also have Venus, which is our planet of love and pleasure, in the sign of Pisces, also showing up against Saturn, also in Pisces. So again, we have conjunctions, merging things, intensifying things. We have the energy of Venus, which is love, pleasure, this is our relationship space. And that's, they're both in the sign of Pisces. And then we have the sign of Saturn, which is limitations or discipline. So you may find that there is either a reduced need to have discipline or limitations within your relationships, or you may find that your ability to be more disciplined in the way that you interact with that space is increased. So it could, you know, always show up in a bunch of ways. But basically, both of these signs being in Pisces is, again, just kind of like upping that intuitive sensitivity, that psychic sensitivity, that creative energy. And finally, for our third conjunction, we have both Jupiter and Uranus in Taurus conjunct with one another. And Jupiter is our planet of luck and good fortune, and that is coming up against, or conjuncting with Uranus, which is the ruler of Aquarius. So this is our sort of sense of the planet of rebellion, the planet of changing the status quo. And both of those are in Taurus. And Taurus is an earth sign. It's a fixed earth sign, and it is a very sensual kind of appreciation. And I don't mean like sensual in a kind of like sexy way, although that can certainly play into it. But I mean more in like of the senses. So this is an appreciation for food, for art, for beauty, for comfort, for our physical spaces around us. And these are conjuncting our sense of good fortune and our sense of rebellion. So one way that this could show up. And again, consult your own natal chart and see where these things fall, which houses these things fall in. But one way this could show up is that you just notice that you're really appreciating the things around you, or that the way you notice the things around you is leading you to have more clarity around what needs to change, what needs to be broken down, and perhaps a little bit of good luck will show up to sort of ease that path a little bit. Next up, we've got the sextiles, and we have 4 of these. And just as a refresher, sextiles are sort of like, they're sweet energy. They're pretty calm and friendly and beneficial energy. It blends the 2 energies in a way that is just a little bit more easeful. So whereas conjunctions sort of like light everything up and make everything intense, which sometimes can be difficult, this instead, it tends to be more friendly energy. So we have Sun in Aries coming up against Pluto in Aquarius. So this is merging the energy of the self, again, Aries, and the Sun, with Pluto in Aquarius. And so like Pluto is our the planet of death and transformation and change. So it's kind of interesting here because what we're seeing is like kind of a real possibility to let something that no longer serves you drop away. And I know I say that sort of shit a lot, but that's because I believe those opportunities are plentiful in life. It's not like if you miss this one opportunity, it'll never come around again. We are always presented with opportunities to grow. We are always presented with opportunities to let go of behaviors or habits or just ways of being that no longer serve us. We're always capable of rising to the challenge of trying to forgive things that need to be forgiven, either within ourselves or the world. So I feel like this is one of those sextiles that, again, just really lights up that possibility. We also have for a sextile Venus in Pisces and Jupiter in Taurus. Again, Venus is our relationship, love, and pleasure. And then we also have Jupiter, which is luck and good fortune. So, there's some, again, real opportunities for some other kinds of healing to possibly show up, or for some connection to show up with the ways in which we interact with the energy of love and pleasure, and letting that energy of Jupiter, which is very expansive energy. It's kind of like, I don't know, I kind of always think of Jupiter as like when you take like a really deep breath, out in somewhere in nature where you can almost just, feel the whole expanse of the environment you're in kind of like coming in, and it's so much bigger than the expansion that your lungs are physically capable of. So again, some really awesome opportunities there. We also have for a sextile, again, with Venus and Pisces, we have that with Uranus in Taurus. I think that's Uranus. I do everything in glyphs when I'm making my notes to help me remember. Yes, that is Uranus. And sometimes I blip, and Uranus and Pluto kind of look the same. I mean, Pluto kind of looks like Neptune. Whatever. I just, old dog, new tricks, all that. So, anyways, we have, where was I? Yes, Venus in Pisces and Uranus in Taurus. So again, that energy of love, pleasure, and also coming up with like rebellion and changing the status quo, and having a bit more like discernment and questioning of the way things are for the purpose of wondering where in the future you could be leading toward that is more ideal for you. So again, you may get some, with again, Pisces coming up here and with Taurus coming up here, you might find that by really paying attention to the things that feel good to you and the things that feel supportive of you with regards to the way you interact with the energies of love and pleasure, that it will help you really hone in on things that maybe need to be either just a minor tweak or maybe just a massive break with different tactics and strategies you've been following through with stuff thus far. But again, being a sextile, this is not like breaking it down and whack you over the head energy and like, you know, hurtful. Like this is usually pretty friendly energy. So friendly doesn't mean it can't have big change. And then finally, we have Jupiter in Taurus with a sextile, again, of Saturn in Pisces. So again, like I said, Pisces energy is all over the place here. But we have, again, a sextile being a friendly aspect. We have luck and expansion and growth sextiling limitation and discipline and responsibility. So it feels like maybe this is a possibility where things will become a little bit easier in a way and a little bit less stressful, which is definitely always something I want to see in my life. And then finally, we have one singular trine, and that is Moon in Libra trining with Pluto in Aquarius. And trines are kind of similar to sextiles, except that they are more powerful. They allow for an easeful and harmonious blending of different kinds of energies. So we have our feelings, and for planets, and then the other planet we have being Pluto, again, just being that the planet of death and power and rebirth. So again, you know, just some real opportunities to have some really deep insights about ourselves, about our life, about how we want to spend our time and spend our attention, because all of those things are limited. So we do have to have discernment. And if we really want to move towards the things that fulfill us and bring us satisfaction and joy in life, then, you know, it's nice to be armed with all of the information that we can be, so that we're making as many appropriate choices towards that destination as possible. Now, finally, before I get into the readings, I did want to also just hit on the numerology of this day. And again, being March 25th, 2024, you add all of those numbers up and you get 18. You reduce that to the number 9. And this is a really beautiful number. So 9 is the energy of completion, but not finality. It's kind of like leveling up in a way, like taking all of the things that you've learned on your journey from 1 through 8 and sort of putting those tools in your tool belt, so that the next thing that you build, you are better armed to do so in a way that has more finesse and more mastery than ever before. This is the energy of transforming lessons, both wins and losses, into true and deep wisdom. So there really are some fantastic opportunities for and during this full moon time to spend some beautiful time with yourself, magical person. Like, you deserve it. You deserve to have good things and illuminated in your life, and I truly believe that. So, okay, now we are going to move directly into the 3 readings. And I have, like I said already, just said it, 3 to choose from. I will be inserting a picture here that I took outside in the garden earlier, but I will also show you. We have 3 tokens, and the first token for reading 1, ooh, just get a whiff of that, so good, is this beautiful flowering rosemary. So it just, I like to pick things, if I can, from the garden that are showing up with their most actualized self, and showing off their beauty, and share it with all of you. So this is rosemary for reading 1. And then for reading 2, we have here, this is a dead nettle. And this is, a lot of people think of it as a weed, but it's actually a beneficial medicinal herb. And I don't think of it as a weed. I'm always happy when I see it show up in the spring, because it's one of the first things to show up and put out flowers, and thus is a really wonderful source of a really wonderful source of food for the bees so early in the spring season. And then finally, we have for reading 3, this is from the pear tree right out in front of my house, which is just currently going into blossom. Unfortunately, they are not really edible pears, so that's kind of a bummer, but it is pretty, at least for a few days out of the year. So again, we have reading 1, reading 2, reading 3. Take what resonates, leave the rest. You're welcome to pick 1, 2, or all 3. Okay, so group one, if you selected this beautiful flowering rosemary, then this is going to be your reading. I'm just clearing some things out of the table, getting my notebooks out of the way. So what I have done here is I pulled oracle cards from 3 different oracle decks in advance. And I also have 2 tarot decks right here that I am going to be pulling cards from live. They've already been pre-shuffled, but I just thought that would be a little bit of a different way to do it, kind of keep it fresh, so to speak. And so here we go. So for oracle cards, group 1, the first one we have for a moon card is, ooh, your commitment is being tested. Interesting. First quarter moon. We also have, oh, and that's right, there was one deck, I think this is the only reading this happened with, but there was one deck where I didn't realize at the time, but when I was pulling cards for you, there were actually 2 that came out. So from this deck, which is the, I think it's called Shine Your Light, you get 2 cards. The first one is Break the Chain, Ancestral Patterns, Healing, Rewriting the Future. Ooh, fascinating group round. We're just getting right in with the deep stuff. Let me tell you that. The other card that we have is Keepers of the Earth. You are not alone. Ancient ancestors stand behind you. And I love the ancestors are coming up in both of these cards because, again, this is kind of showing, and interestingly, just want to point out real quick, that with the moon in the first quarter, we appear to have a moon here that is half shaded in darkness and half illuminated. And I think these 2 cards, both talking about ancestors, but from different perspectives. Like, yes, there are ancient ancestors who are here to support you. And also, yes, there are ancestral patterns that we are sometimes required to rewrite if we want to fully heal. So both of those things can be true at the same time. So it's a matter of, again, having discernment as to which ones truly serve you, which ancestors or ancestor energy really has your back, and which ones you are being challenged to heal in this lifetime. And I feel like that's where your commitment is being tested. Like, what is your commitment to living your happiest life? I hope that that commitment is complete. Or moving towards completion, I guess that's probably a better way to put it. Also, for oracle cards, we have Frog Spirit, Clear Out the Clutter, which again is just going to the same point of using discernment. Like, clearing out the clutter doesn't mean get rid of everything that you have, whether metaphorically or metaphysically or physically. But what it does mean is using discernment over things that are showing up in your space, metaphysical or physical, and having some discernment about choosing to get rid of, pass on, move out of your space, you know, the things that really aren't helpful to you. So next, we are going to pull a couple of tarot cards from a couple of decks and just flesh out these full moon messages a little bit more for you, group 1. Ooh, we have the 10 of Wands. So I feel like maybe coming up to this moment, there's been something that's pretty heavy that you have been sort of working on. There's kind of, as you can see, there's a lot of baggage. Things are on the move, and this person, I firmly believe, is moving towards better things, but they are in the process of that journey right now. And it has become difficult. It's been a long journey. And wanting to move towards completion of that journey it's almost in sight. So next we also have the 6 of Pentacles. Ooh, fantastic. Okay, so this is sort of the energy of altruism and knowing that you are plentiful enough that you have not only enough for yourself, but also you have extra to spare. And even though this is Pentacles, this doesn't necessarily mean money. I know right now this is actually a time of a struggle for a lot of people, you know, myself included. And so this doesn't necessarily have to be money, but what it could mean is time, giving time of yourself to share a message with the world, or share a gift of service with the world, or just showing up in sort of some way along those lines. So, but it's coming from a place of knowing that you are plentiful in and of yourself. Okay, and we also have the Four of Pentacles. Oh my gosh, group one, this is so interesting because the Four of Pentacles is kind of like, okay, I mean, it's literally like so well illustrated just in these two pictures. So while the Six of Pentacles is indicative of giving things away, the Four of Pentacles is kind of indicative of holding on to things. And of course, there's lots of different ways that this can show up, but I feel like, again, we've got like, your journey has been long. There have been difficulties of it that are, that have been really challenging, and you are kind of in this place of needing to use discernment. So let's see what's on the bottom of this deck. Okay, bottom of this deck is we have the Two of Swords, which in my opinion is both a card of needing to make a decision and a card of sort of self-limiting beliefs. Like, so we have here this person who is, you know, she's got these two crows sort of squawking at her from different directions. It looks as though they're sort of like pulling on different strings of her hair, and it looks like a very confusing situation. The reality is that like her hands are free and she could easily take that blindfold off, which would help her navigate that situation much more easily. So while it is true that like sometimes, you know, like in this case, like it can be difficult to clearly be able to make a choice about something because it feels like you either have too much information or not enough information. Sometimes it's a matter of just needing to realize that you are not seeing something that's right there, and trying to maybe like shift your perspective a little bit. Yeah, I feel like this could be a really impactful time for you, group one. I do feel like there's an opportunity to do some healing here, have some forgiveness, and be altruistic and generous while still keeping your boundaries in place. Yeah, so let's see what the second tarot deck has to share for full moon messages. All right, and the first one we have is, Nine of Challenges, which this is in other decks known as the Nine of Swords. So again, this is kind of a card of having fear of what you can't see. Like, this is the feeling of anxiety. And sometimes, you know, anxiety is a perfectly valid emotional response to have, and it is certainly informative. I have found for myself that sometimes I have spent much time being anxious about something that in the end turned out to be not a really well-spent use of my time being anxious for it. We also have the Four of Spells. Again, showing up with an opportunity to bring balance, an opportunity to move towards that beneficial space of being, what's a good way to put this? So like, one of the things that I really like about this card, like this is, in my opinion, one of the most beautiful cards in the deck. And I mean, the artwork is lovely too, but I just mean the energy of the Four of Spells, which is also known as the Four of Wands, by the way. But this is the energy of being in balance and being aware. And so when we are aware of both positive and negative aspects, or perhaps positive and negative consequences of things that we may or may not do, if we have all of that information and we are not, it allows us to move forward more intentionally towards the place that we want to go. And like Four of Wands energy is very much, sometimes it's called the 1111 card. A lot of renditions of this card will have a rainbow somewhere on it because it is a very positive feeling card, but it's not positivity for the sake of positivity, because it is also a card of balance. And so sometimes the best ways that we can appreciate the positive things is to also recognize the harder aspects of life, and keeping those things all in sight allows us to not be like spiritually bypassy happy or like avoiding or negating like real challenges and being like fake happy in that way, but like truly aware and seeing and still coming from or back to that place of overflowing, you know, having more than you need. All right, so it's interesting because I feel like, again, with this, well, we'll just wait until the next card comes out before I start yammering again. Oh yeah, we got the Lovers here. And this also is very much a card of balance. This is the 6 in the major arcana, always called the Lovers. Sometimes it is a card of romance, but it is also a card of contracts that we make. And whether those are social contracts or social agreements or partnerships, but they are a place where almost as though like each aspect in the partnership is full and complete and knows itself to be so, and thus the partnership is balanced and poised towards true beauty. So it's interesting. I feel like group 1, you are very much on this sort of like cuspish place where it's time to make some choices about things. It's time to take the healing, take all of the, kind of like that 9 energy that I was talking about with the numerology. I feel like there's a lot of energy of that here, where like, you really are, this is an opportunity to level up to, and what do I mean by that? It could show up as in a bazillion ways, of course. But one way of leveling up, for example, would be to take things from a various aspects of your life, like say, you know, jobs. Say that you had a series of jobs and you've kind of learned a bunch of things that you didn't like or did like about having those various experiences. This could also be friendships, this could also be partnerships, literally could be anything. But it's sort of like taking the cumulative knowledge from those previous experiences and allowing them to inform where you go from here. And seeing the dark with the light and allowing yourself to break the chains that need to be broke. So that you clear out the clutter. I'm just reading the cards now. All right, so one more, we're going to look at the bottom. Yes, I love this for you, group 1. We have the Earth Mother. Wait, is that what it's called? No, the Green Mother. And in other decks, this is known as the Empress. This is like big mama energy. Like, she is the ultimate archetypical mother. And like, nurturing and caring and providing everything that we need. I feel like for some of you, group 1, this would be a good time if you are finding that clearing out the clutter, especially if it's metaphysical clutter that is living in your head. If you are having a hard time clearing that out, I feel like for you, this is also an invitation to spend a little bit of time in nature and not be in a place where there's just so much information coming at you, like trying to like get everything to be a little bit more still so you can get a little bit more sort of de-escalated. And when our systems are sort of de-escalated and we're feeling very calm, it sometimes can become a little bit easier to see what needs to be shifted and what we don't need anymore, and all of that good stuff. So magical group 1, I hope you found this helpful. I hope you find it interesting. As always, please don't forget to be kind and gentle with yourselves, and I will see you soon. Hello, group 2. If you selected this beautiful Hello, group 2. If you selected this beautiful dead nettle blossom, goodness gracious. Hello, group 2. If you selected this beautiful dead nettle blossom, then this is going to be your reading. And so what I have done here is I have pulled a few oracle cards, and then previously that were already in the photo, and then I'm also going to live here pull some tarot cards. So the first thing, ooh, interesting. All right, so our first 3 cards are New Moon in Cancer. You and your loved ones are safe. So perhaps feeling a little bit of anxiety about something like that. We have Vulture Spirit. Nothing is wasted. Always a very important message. And also Priestess. How are you being called to step up and lead? So some pretty big messages right off the bat. I feel like maybe there have been some things that have happened in the past that you have had kind of in your mind or showing up in your space lately that are making you sort of reflect on previous experience and feeling like something was a waste of time or something was a waste of energy. But everything is information. So even things that may feel like they are waste, actually we can take the information gained during those times and use that to sort of inform where we go from here. So maybe you are being asked to inform your future with how to lead based on understandings of things that you've already gained in your life, and sort of like let that be an example for other people that are around you as you kind of move your life forward. You and your loved ones are safe. I'm so curious about that one. It's really interesting. Like new moons are when things are conjunct. So, and Cancer, of course, is a water sign. It's a very emotional, very sensitive sign. So I wonder if you've just been having some feelings or having some nervousness lately. Or perhaps this is even something like you're thinking about something that you want to do, but feeling like maybe there's some anxiety about how somebody close to you is going to respond. I'm not sure. Let's see what the cards have to say to sort of flesh out these messages a little bit more for you, group 2. Oh my gosh, this is so weird. This is literally the same card that started off the reading for group 1, and it is the 10 of Wands. So there's some feelings of overwhelm, of feeling like you've really been putting in an effort for a really, really long time now, and it's hard, and it's been overwhelming at times. There's been a lot of extra things that you've had to carry along with you on this journey, and it is kind of that feeling of sort of like existential exhaustion in a way. So again, I feel like maybe this is kind of pointing back to that nothing is wasted. Like even like along this whole journey, even though parts of it sometimes for some of us, you know, many parts of it. I wonder what that noise was. Curious. Anyhow, but for some of us, many parts of the journey may not be pleasant, but that doesn't mean that they aren't without purpose. Okay, so for a next tarot card for you, group 2, we have, ooh, yeah, we have the King of Cups. This dude knows his way around his own emotional landscape and is very good at having not only boundaries with himself, but boundaries with other people that come from a place of being flexible, from being compassionate, from being born out of love, rather being born out of fear. Dude's very, this is a person, see how his heart chakra, it's like illuminating from behind his head, you know, kind of that sort of like third eye area. I'm not sure if you can see, but there we go, get that real close. You can see how it actually is illuminating, like if you follow all of those lines back, it's actually coming from the heart space. So this is a person who, regardless of his previous experiences or their previous experiences, doesn't obviously, the genders don't mean anything, but regardless of previous experiences, the place where he has gotten to is a place of pretty deep emotional wisdom. So like the journey has not been for nothing. Nothing is wasted. It's all opportunities to learn and understand and grow and be challenged. Ooh, we also have the 8 of Pentacles, and this is the energy of putting in the work, showing up and doing the damn thing, actually showing up over and over and over again. Like if you're an MBTI nerd, then this is kind of that energy of like SI, like SESI, like doing it over and over and over again until it becomes more normal, until it becomes more practiced. So this is kind of that energy of Saturn a little bit too, that energy of discipline and that energy of putting in the effort towards a specific outcome that you're working towards. All right, we'll pull one more of those. Oh, and it just flew right out. Oh, interesting. We have also the 10 of Swords. And okay, so we've got two 10s here showing up on either end. And not gonna lie, 10 of Swords, 10 of Wands, both challenging energy, both difficult energy. Like, this is telling me that you have really been through the ringer. But what I love about these cards too, or about tarot in general, is that the 10 is the card of finality. It is the end of a cycle. And with the 10 of Swords, this is the end of a painful cycle, or a painful aspect to a cycle. And so what that means is that inherent within the end of a cycle is the potential for a new cycle to begin. And I particularly appreciate the way that it is artistically rendered in this version of the tarot, because this is very looking towards a brighter horizon. So again, like, the protagonist in this card has taken all of that painful, difficult information, and they have moved past this point of continuing to carry the burden, and they are instead moving towards a place of freedom. Freedom hard won too. And then at the bottom of the deck, we have the Ace of Pentacles. This is beautiful, group 2, sorry. I really love this. It seems as though there's been a lot going on. There have been a lot of lessons for you to learn, but I feel like this card, the Ace of Pentacles, which is like, underlying all of this is like new material circumstances. There's a new opportunity in some way showing up for you. And I do wonder if an aspect of that will be leadership in some way. And leadership, you know, like, we tend to think of these terms sometimes when we talk about them, we think about them as being on a very grand scale. You know, like, a leader is somebody who, you know, owns a company, or, you know, runs a country, or something, you know, very massive and very huge and powerful like that. But we are, on a much smaller scale, always, I think, even if we are only leading ourselves, the opportunity for leadership is always there. And I think, in fact, it does kind of begin with self-leadership, because the way that we comport our own lives and the way that we take the information that we've gained from our life and from our experiences, and how we choose to lead ourselves first, can be the most impactful thing of all. So stop following along with what other people think that you should do, or think that you should be, or think that you should say. And again, sort of like, you know, that sort of that energy of Aquarius, that energy of rebellion, like taking everything that you've learned and letting yourself be freely you. Okay, so next we are going to, and that yielding, and I think also, again, just because I feel like this deck is just so beautiful and so like just on top of it with the imagery. You know, there's also, again, I'm gonna get a little closer, but if you look here at the bottom, there are roots coming out. So this is not only like new material circumstances, but this is new material circumstances that have the potential for enormous growth in the future. Okay, so now we are going to move on to the second deck and get a few more messages for you. Ooh. And here we have the Three of Boons, which is the Three of Pentacles. What a charming picture. Yeah, and the Three of Pentacles, I love how she, like, it's the energy of doing a thing and putting your work out there. Like, some people will call this apprenticeship, and I suppose one way of looking at this card is that not only, like, the crow looks like he's taking notes on what she's doing. So perhaps the crow is the student, or perhaps this other person in the background is also learning. It's kind of hard to say. But it is about getting your message out there, about getting yourself, getting your message, getting your product, getting something that you have been working on and sort of like introducing it to the community, to the world, rather than having it be something that you only do for yourself. So if you are a maker of things, then this would be like showing your work to people, or, you know, putting it out there in the world in some way, and having the bravery to do that, because it is an act of bravery. Like, it's one thing when you create a relationship between you and yourself, and it could be a physical thing, it could even be an idea, it could be, you know, a more metaphysical thing, like your writings about things. But there is, like, when we take the relationship between us and that thing, and then we bring in the third party in that Three of Pentacles, which is the other outside of you and that thing, then it can really shift things, and it can feel very vulnerable at first. You know, that's why they often call it the card of apprenticeship, because there is a feeling of like newness to it in a way. All right, we also have, ooh, the Two of Spells. Group 2, I feel like you're meant to get your message out there, and your message is like you're meant to get some aspect of yourself out there, and you've gone through a lot, you've put in a lot to getting to this point, and it's now time to sort of set your intentions, to step up and lead, and again, to take all of those sensitivities, which are right now showing up for you and your loved ones, and reminding you that, like, especially on the most spiritual of levels, like, we are unharmable. Like, I do believe that. Like, these bodies obviously can be harmed. I'm certainly not going to try and negate reality, but I do believe that we are spiritual beings who are having temporary human experiences. And I also believe that at some very fundamental level, that we may or may not in this life be able to truly connect with, there is an aspect of us that is incapable of being harmed. Okay, so now let's see another tarot card. Ooh, we have the Five of Spells. Okay, so we've got some spells energy coming out here. And like, Five of Spells is giving it a go, even though you're not that great at it, and you're probably going to mess up. And isn't that the way of it? Because, like, yes, there's putting yourself out there, but there's also, like, not expecting that putting yourself out there, that sharing your ideas, that allowing yourself to be vulnerable by being more visible, that doesn't mean that it's always going to be perfect. Sometimes this card is also called the card of conflicts, so it can be, you know, like having a difference of opinion. And it can also be like, as it's sort of indicated in this picture, you can see that this person is just sort of now, like, they're new to this magic wand thing, and they're still learning, and they went and changed somebody into a frog. So what are you gonna do? Or maybe that's even, yeah, it looks like it was somebody else inside of them. So it's like, there's kind of like an air of like unintended consequences to this, and that sometimes things are going to show up that we don't necessarily anticipate, and that we have to have a little bit of flexibility in that, and again, come from that place of leadership, rather than letting ourselves kind of like wallow in the failure of not being perfect. And then we have here the Forge. Hell yeah, this is the card of Temperance. This is, and like, there's, you know, the word temperance, like, sometimes people will talk about this card and talk about, like, well, you know, you need to temper things, you need to be more mild, you need to be less on the extremes and more in the middle. And while that is true in a way, there's another sort of level or aspect of this card that I always feel is very potent. And again, this deck, which is one of the reasons I love it so fucking much, is so great at putting it into play. And so they call this card the Forge. I've also seen it called Alchemy in other decks, which is an excellent way of putting it. And essentially, it is taking the raw materials and forging them into something useful. So again, kind of like going back to this very notion that nothing is wasted. So not to get too deep, not to get too dark, but just to use myself as an experience, like this card, like taking the raw materials of having difficult experiences in the past and using the information from those experiences to forge yourself into a stronger, more resilient, more compassionate, more understanding, just evolved aspect of yourself. So this is truly, I mean, I know you've probably heard me say this before, but this is really one of my favorite cards in the deck because it is such a card of agency. It's like kind of saying like, yeah, shit has happened. Bad things have happened. Unpleasant experiences have been happening. I was saddled with baggage that I've been carrying all this way, and I didn't want to carry it to begin with. It wasn't my fault that I was given this baggage. So it's not about fault. It's not about blame. But knowing that and doing something useful with it that is beneficial, or recognizing beneficial outcomes from unbeneficial things and using that to just recognize how fucking resilient you are. Okay, and then underneath it, oh, group 2, I love it as a final card. I feel like the final card for group 1 was also beautiful. We have the 2 of Cups. It can be a card of romance, but it is, regardless of whether or not there is a romantic or sexual aspect to it, this is very much the energy of 2 hearts connecting. It doesn't even have to be human. This, you know, like this could very much be, you know, just the space that you share with another creature that makes you feel good. It is most likely going to be a human for many of us because our way to communicate and interact with other humans can be more nuanced, but also sometimes more complex. You know, like there are times like, you know, in the morning, my cat tends to be very, very cuddly. And there are times when like just the bond of trust between the 2 of us, just as keeper of cat and cat, is a really beautiful thing to witness. And it's one of the things, those kinds of moments, those kinds of recognition of when there is mutual caring, mutual respect, mutual love, mutual trust. Those are truly the beautiful moments in life. And I feel like this is kind of like this energy of you being able to like recognize situations and keep your heart space open is kind of the underlying message here. Like, yeah, there's been a lot of shit. But you know what? You've been through it. You've survived. You've learned. It's time to now take all of those learnings and figure out what you want to do with them. Figure out like where you want to take your life going forward. And putting yourself out there, sharing your ideas, knowing that everything's not going to be perfect right off the bat, but that is also going into this next cycle of collecting data to then, again, in the future sometime, continue that next leveling up. So, group 2, I hope you found this helpful. I hope you found it interesting. As always, don't forget to be kind and gentle with yourselves, and I will see you soon. Hello, group 3. If you selected this adorable little pear blossom, then this is going to be your reading. And so what I have done here is I have pulled some oracle cards in advance that were in the photo, and then I also have 2 tarot decks here that I will be pulling some cards from for you. Ooh, heck yeah. Okay, so first thing we have is North Node. Step out of your comfort zone. Whew, that's not a challenge. Then we also have Wolf Spirit. Turn knowledge into wisdom. And the Age of Light. You have been training for this for lifetimes. Okay. So right out of the bat, I feel like this full moon, some of the messages to you are, it is time to change something. And maybe it's something you already know exactly what needs to be changed, or some circumstance around you has changed that is calling on you to do something that you've never done before. and maybe you've got a little bit of nervousness about it, but on some level you have been training for this for lifetimes. Like, you have been moving towards stepping out of your comfort zone and stepping into this space of wisdom, taking what you know and turning it into wisdom. Pardon me. So let's pull some tarot cards for you, group 3, and we will see. Oh, that one just really wants. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. Well, that was a pile, so we're just going to stop there. Okay. So first we have the Tower. The Tower. Some things definitely need to change. We also have, oh, dang. Okay, so we also have the Ace of Cups, which is a new emotional understanding or a new emotional opportunity, perhaps a new partnership or a new relationship or a new friendship, or just a new understanding of something that is very emotionally fulfilling. We also have the Ace of Swords, which is a new idea, a new way of thinking. And so first of all, let's just stop there just for a minute. So I just want to just stop real quick and say that this is very indicative that from the destruction or ending of one thing comes major opportunities for many other things. And that right there is, I think, really pointing to that step out of your comfort zone. And you may find that, like, the Tower card often points to circumstances outside of our control. Like, the Tower card isn't usually, like, we don't choose for the Tower to come down. The Tower comes down because it must, because it's not sustainable in some way. And so it must come down in some way. So there's not necessarily, like, we can't really control it coming down. But what we can do is take the Tower coming down and allowing the structural things that caused the Tower to fall in the first place, like learning what those were. Like, okay, we'll just talk about relationships because the Ace of Cups is the first thing that showed up here. But, like, it could very well be that a relationship has come to an end for some reason, and that is allowing you to have a different understanding of maybe something within your relationships that continuously hasn't worked. Like, many of us, if we are able to look back on our life and sort of like zoom out a little bit, it's not very difficult to find the patterns that we continue to make that continue to not serve us. So it may be that you just have recently seen another iteration of that pattern, and this full moon is challenging you to take what you know and allow the wisdom from that knowledge to lead you forward more towards a place that is both more full of light, but also maybe a little bit scarier. And not scarier because it is actually necessarily scary, but scarier just because it's new. Like, sometimes it's really easy to be complacent, even if we are uncomfortable with something in our life and we could change it. We often will sit in that place of not changing things because maybe we don't feel like we deserve it to be better or something like that. We also, just fleshing out the rest of this deck, we have the Page of Wands and the 8 of Wands. So the 8 of Wands is all about communication, and the Page of Wands is very nascent energy. It's like a new creative aspect, but not entirely new because it's not ace energy. It's just an elevated version of it. So, it is a court card, so it does sort of indicate that maybe there has been some part of there's something that inspires you, something that will speak to you. And I feel like leaning into that, leaning into letting yourself be inspired by these new things coming into your space is going to be pretty integral to kind of being the nurturing energies needed for that Ace of Swords and Ace of Cups energy. And then what do we get at the bottom here of this deck? Oh, we have the Two of Swords. This one came up earlier too. So again, kind of coming back to the challenge inherent in these messages, which is stepping out of your comfort zone. Like, like I said, sometimes we choose to keep ourselves in uncomfortable situations, like this person here, although she very clearly could and very easily could take off that blindfold and move instead into a place. I mean, heck, she could take the blindfold off and use it to tie back her hair so that the crows wouldn't continue to harass her. I mean, obviously they have messages for her, but the way they're trying to convey them, nothing is actually getting through because it's too distracting, it's too chaotic. So I feel like sometimes with this card, there is also a sort of challenge inherent in that, is into how can I get myself out of where I am so that I can more clearly see where I need to go, which sounds very confusing, I do realize. But again, it's about stepping out of a place that even if it isn't 100% comfortable, is still familiar, and allowing yourself to step out of that place. And also that you deserve to step out of that place. Like, you deserve the goodness that will come from stepping out of your comfort zone. And next we have here, oh, these two came out together. We have the Child of Spells and the Weaver of Visions. So Child of Spells is Page of Wands. So we've got the Page of Wands showing up twice for you folks. And we have, what did I say that was? Weaver of Visions, which this is the Queen of Cups. I feel like what with the Tower, we've got an obvious ending here. We've got an obvious point of for you to pivot, or for a new cycle to begin in some way. And I feel like you really are being encouraged to tune into your authentic self and turn out the noise, turn off the noise around you. And something about tuning into your authentic, like inner, like very much inner self will give you the courage and the validation and the encouragement to step out of your comfort zone. Okay, so, and I feel like there is something to a playful aspect of this. I feel like that is one of the invitations is, and maybe stepping into that place of playfulness is something that is a challenge for you. Maybe that is part of what stepping out of your comfort zone will be, is to allowing that spirit of play to re-enter. And we also have Keeper of Spells. Okay, so this is the King of Wands. So we have the Queen of Cups and the King of Wands. We've got two pages. We've got lots of court cards here. I feel like, the opportunity is really present for you to use this illumination of the full moon. Again, we've got, like, just looking at the full moon itself, stepping back a little bit to the astrology that I talked about earlier. We have the sun in Aries and we have the moon in Libra. So there is this kind of like push-pull of wanting to move forward and wanting to hold back. Having all of these like creative, like very like fire energy. There's creativity, there's inspiration, there's a desire to drive forward, but there's also a desire to kind of hold back and be in a place of cooperation. So I feel like a lot of that sort of energy is showing up here too. But I do really feel like experimenting and having some play is going to be really important for the purpose of mastering. Like a lot of people, the way they talk about play, and I'm guilty of this myself, is that, we think that, play is for children, but it's not. It's actually really important through all aspects of our life, because it is oftentimes through play and through practice, and through approaching practice from the spirit of play. And play is very interactive. I think of the energy of play as not only being interactive, but also being very curious. There is a lightness to it. There is an openness to the energy of play. And I feel like that's what you're really being called on at this time. And okay, so let's pull one more card from here. And, oh, hell yeah! we have the Strength card. So this is the card of recognizing that strength is sometimes more about compassion and openness and less about the spirit of domination. So that, I think, is a really beautiful thing, especially since we started with the Tower, which is like, the Tower is, like I said, it's what happens around you. It's not usually something that is of your doing. It is more that like circumstances happen around you. But I feel like the energy of the Strength card is very much a card sort of similar to the Two of Wands. It's kind of a card of agency. It's a card of saying that you know there are challenges and you are choosing how to step out of that space of challenge and view it a little bit differently so that you can not bang your head against the wall doing the same thing over and over again that didn't work. So there's not only agency, but this inherent in this card is this sense of wisdom. And also, I just want to point out here that we have, again, this wolf theme showing up. So we have the wolf spirit who initially showed up to turn us to turn knowledge into wisdom. And I think that is, I think that's really beautiful. And also there was something else I wanted to say about the Two of Swords that I was just thinking a minute ago. Oh, that was it. So I feel like there is a similarity between these two cards, because it's almost like the Strength card is kind of like what can come from removing the blindfold that's shown here. It's like making a choice that is beneficial to you and maybe isn't the most obvious choice, which is why sometimes it takes a few minutes to see it. So I feel like for you, group 3, I feel like this full moon is challenging you to step out of your comfort zone, do some new things, or perhaps it's maybe even doing old things in a slightly new way. It's turning the information that you've gained into actual and actionable wisdom, letting the Tower become a thing of your past and instead moving towards these new opportunities that are inherent from all of this learning that you're doing. And yeah, like I said, with all of these court cards, also like really kind of, one, giving yourself props for having survived to get here, while also still recognizing that, thank goodness, the journey ain't over yet. So magical, group 3. I hope you found this helpful. I hope you found it interesting. And as always, don't forget to be kind and gentle with yourselves. And I will see you soon.